Hello to all my American Horror Story historians. My name is EJ, and we have the review for the final 2 episodes of American Horror Story NYC. Join me as I talk about Requiem 1981 and 1987, Part 1 and Part 2. Going into this finale, I expected big things from this season. I really enjoyed the ride, and I don't think they let me down with these last 2 episodes. Were these my favorite episodes of AHS ever? No, because honestly, they were pretty depressing. These were very heavy episodes. These are the exact episodes I knew were coming. We're watching people that we fell in love with during the season just get brutally murdered by a disease. This season all came together by this episode. We all kind of knew where things were heading, but this was the epic grand finale, and it was hard-hitting. It was sad. It was emotional. That moment where Gino is watching people he knows just pass away, and they do that very artistic, like, the bodies falling into the grave. I cannot imagine what it was like for gay men and women and anyone at this time dealing with the early AIDS HIV epidemic. It was sad to watch. This was something I've spoke to older generations of queer men who dealt with this, who saw their friends just get piled up bodies and bodies. I mean, there's so many famous musicians, Bette Midler, Sheryl Lee Roth, who were in the New York Broadway scene, and then they watched their friends just pass away. So that's what this episode really hit me hard. The horror wasn't there, and I know something a lot of people want, but there was something very terrifying. That scene where Patrick is just getting kind of ignored by the doctors, that was so upsetting. That was just so real. I think we saw this a lot in the show Pose. If you watch that, that was happening to them as well. The doctors just weren't caring. They weren't giving them food, paying attention to their IVs. There was just a lot of things like that where we watched people just get ignored because of what happened to them because of a sickness. It was very hard hitting. Now, again, these episodes get very heavy, very like metaphorical. There's a lot of questions I have, so hopefully I'm able to answer those right now. And if you have any questions, hopefully I'm able to give you some kind of resolution, some kind of answers, because wow, there's a lot going on. So let's get into Requiem 1981, 1987, Part 1. This episode has a heavy focus on Sam and Patrick. These are the two main focuses of this episode. Episode 2 has a lot more of Gino and Adam, which are basically our sole survivors ish, because I don't know if I would want to be as with the position that they get to by the end. But yes, so in the beginning of Part 1, we are seeing Sam basically have his purgatory, his come to Jesus moment, where he's getting very sick and he's end up in this weird cage where Big Daddy's there, and also Henry's giving him shit. Like, this got really heady. He's having to face a lot of the things he did. Like, oh, you don't like being in a cage against your will? Oh, Sam, honey, maybe you don't do this to people that you've done your entire life. You're a sick human being. This episode made me feel oddly sad for him, watching what he had to deal with, watching him get sick, watching him have to kind of come to realization that he was a bad person and what he did. This was a very heavy little first section. It got strange. We had a Big Daddy reveal, and it turned out to be one of the early men that we saw in this season. It was weird. It was strange. It definitely impacted me, though. I felt for the same character more than I've had the entire series. So they definitely did what they needed to do with this, like, section of the episode. But I don't know, it was sad, Henry giving away the ashes, and I'm like, oh, at Fire Island, where, Sam kind of wreaked havoc. I'm like, I don't want his ashes at this beach where I'm trying to have a good time. I don't want his memory here. Yeah, the Sam section of this episode is pretty hit or miss for me. I understood what they were doing. It made me feel something, but it just wasn't my favorite, especially when we get to the hard-hitting second half about Patrick. A big theme I noticed throughout both of these episodes is coming to realization or facing what you have to deal with. That is a big theme for Patrick in his section of the episode. We are seeing him get very sick, and he's in a dirty hospital where no one's paying attention to him. He's going blind, his retina's detached. It was scary, just the hopelessness of this. I felt very, very uncomfortable, and we're seeing him kind of start to pass, and Barb shows up, and Barb kind of takes him through his life and says, this is where you ended up. This is where you first met Gino. I was happy for you, even though I was a little upset. This is this moment. This is this. I mean, he, like, disrespected a fellow police officer who was coming onto him to hide his own self. Like, we really saw the vicious cycle. That's what Barb says. There's a cycle to this. One thing happens, which leads you to do this, which leads you to do that. That's the cycle of hate. That's the cycle of abuse. It's a very true thing, and I thought this was very interesting to depict, because we find out the root of Patrick's issues. He basically had a horribly shitty father who taught him how to shoot a gun, but also to not be a sissy, and, you know, he internalized that, and his father was very abusive. I mean, firing a gun next to his ear, things like that. You really saw where Patrick was coming from. I don't excuse any of his homophobia, don't excuse any of the bad things he did, but this helped flesh it out. It was really, really interesting, and really made me feel a bit more for Patrick's character. Then sadly he passes. Gino is there with him. Gino is dealing with a lot. I mean, Gino and Adam's character, we'll talk about Adam for the next episode, have saw so much loss. All of their friends, all of the people they worked with are all gone, and it's sad. I mean, I wish I would have seen Fran in this episode. She wasn't really around, but we got Patti LuPone in both in small appearances. We'll talk about her for episode 2, but yeah, I was really, really heartbroken with this first episode, and I was just like, yay, I hope episode 2 is a cheerful ending, and not really. Requiem 1981/1987 Part 2 is mostly about Adam. We're seeing Adam uncover Hannah's death. He starts taking her tapes and starts really trying to get what the hell is going on. He's really trying to push this information out, which we know ends up leading to the medical breaks of people finding out more about HIV/AIDS, and being able to get to where we are now, where people can be undetectable, which undetectable means untransmittable. Like, there was a lot of progress we've made in our community with HIV and AIDS, and people like Adam, his character, is kind of what helped push it to doctors realizing it, and more of the mainstream focus. Adam is really, really trying so damn hard to justify what's happening, and, you know, he goes, you know, he's trying to fix what's happening as well. You know, he's passing out flyers. We basically need to start using condoms. He goes to the bathhouse run by Patti LuPone, and she's just like, yo, what the hell is happening? People are dying. I'm bleaching shit. I'm doing this. And he's just like, yeah, no, it's sexually transmitted. He's very guilty for that because of what he did, you know, using his sperm to go to Hannah and give her the baby, so he feels very guilty. He goes to the bathhouse and says, this needs to stop, be protective, and she's like, baby, I'm shutting this down. This is done. This era of gay life is basically done. We need to wrap this up. Like, we need to wrap up peepees. Yeah, I felt this. I really understood Adam's character and his drive and his will. Then we get to the second half of this episode, which shifts to Gino, and he is going through the years. He's made it past 1981, where a lot of his peers are going, and making it to 1987, where Patrick goes, to 91, where more people are dying, and he's just watching it. This whole end of this episode was so artistic, so beautiful, handled so well. I was very impacted watching Big Daddy just put people into the graves, watching, like, Gino meet people and they instantly are just dying around him. It was hard hitting, like the acceptance that you have to be like, cool, I'll know this person for a week and they'll probably die of AIDS. Like, it's sad. It was very, very effective, and we're seeing Gino pass away, and Gino had a hard life. I'm glad he got to be with Patrick in the end. The Patrick Gino stuff, it was hit or miss for me. I liked when they bonded. When they did not get along, I did not understand why they were together, but yeah, I liked that he had his moment with him at the end. It was really sweet. Adam goes to deliver his big old speech at the funeral, and that's kind of where we end up with. That's kind of where we're at the end of this episode. Grief, trauma, like, this is hard-hitting stuff, and it affected me. I don't love these episodes because it's a little too depressing, but I appreciate what they had to offer. American Horror Story NYC is over. This was a weird season of the 2 episodes per week, which made this go by so much faster, but I liked it. For people who do not like it, I understand. This isn't the horror show you're expecting, but for a gay man, this show was hard to watch. It was scary. It was terrifying. I liked the thriller slasher elements. I liked the very real, very social justice, the very conscious things that we dealt with. This was a lot of a season. If you skipped it, I hope you you do check it out one day. I do think this is worthwhile. It reminds me a bit of Hotel with a bit of Asylum, just the realness of like Cult as well. There's just a lot of little elements here that really brought this together to be one of my favorite seasons. I really enjoyed the whole ride, and I hope you did too. Make sure you guys stick around for my channel because I have other things coming up. Next week I'm reviewing the Wednesday Addams TV show coming to Netflix. Cannot wait for that. And then I will also be doing another Ryan Murphy project where I dive into a season of Nip Tuck at a time. We're starting with season 1 coming up soon, where I say, wow, season 1 changed television. Much like what we did with American Horror Story changed things in 2011, we're seeing Ryan Murphy change things with Nip Tuck way back in the early 2000s. So make sure you guys join me for those videos. Make sure you guys give me suggestions. What do you want to see on the channel? Let me know down in the comments below. Maybe I'll finally catch up with Chucky. Maybe I'll talk about Dragula. Let me know all your suggestions there. What do you think about these episodes? What did you think of AHS NYC? All those comments, subscribe, thumbs up, all that jazz, and let's talk about things down below.